key issues that I'm writing up right now in our report for the beginning of the second quarter is workforce and talent challenges here in South Florida. And so for all of you who are looking, or students perhaps looking to enter this industry, or professionals looking to transition into it and are evaluating things, that CFA designation and the knowledge that that represents is a key indicator that you're a part of that skilled workforce, the seasoned professionals, and professionals that are ready to move into this workforce that people are really looking for here. So I congratulate you on taking that initiative to earn or work toward that designation and all the fabulous career opportunities that can open up. So as part of what we do here in the College of Business, of bringing industry and students and others together, I'm happy to host this, happy to help facilitate this for our faculty and for folks in industry. So thank you all for being part of it. Glad you're here tonight. Please enjoy things, and welcome to FAU.
I would now like to introduce Robert Hellmann. Robert is our moderator for the evening. His firm is based in New York. It is Hellmann Career Consulting. Robert has run our career coaching services that is available to local society members for almost 3 years at this point. He participated last year as a moderator and really did a fantastic job for us, so we invited him again back this year. I'm going to hand the mic over to Robert, and he is going to also introduce each of the panelists this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. So, okay, let me try to actually clip this on and see if that works. If it doesn't, you can't hear me, let me know. I'll hold it. Anyway, so I'm so excited to have this esteemed panel here this evening. And before I introduce them, I want to say a few words, just from my perspective as a career coach, about how you can get what you want in your job search and in your career. Just to give you a quick background, I am, as you said, a career coach. I've been one since 2003, but I also bring 20 years of experience in the trenches in places like American Express, JP Morgan Chase, and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. So I've been where a lot of you have been, where a lot of you are now. I've had to get interviews, I've had to ace interviews, I've interviewed people. So that all informs what I'm going to share with you. What I want to share with you, just take 5 minutes before I introduce the panel, is basically what I do when a client comes to me, like a mental checklist to diagnose their search, if they're in a job search. It's almost like I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor of the job search. Okay, that's the attitude I take. So a lot of times clients will come to me and they'll say things like, Rob, there are no jobs, or I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I'm overqualified, or I'm underqualified, or I've sent out 100 applications and there's nothing, so there are no jobs. Lots of permutations of those types of complaints I hear as well. And sometimes they are right on. But I would say the majority of the time, it's something else. And the way I figure out what is really going on is I go through this checklist. I'm going to share with you just a few excerpts of the things you may want to be thinking about for yourselves if you ever find yourself in a situation where you have to make a transition, a career transition. So the first thing I ask to myself is, are they going out and getting what they want, or are they just waiting for things to come to them? What I mean by that is ads, search firms, that's the passive approach. You're waiting for the ad to show up, you're waiting for the headhunter to call. There's a role for that. But if you're just doing that, which is what most people do, that they're relying just on that, you're in for a long search in most cases. You need to take the active approach, which is all about networking, leveraging your network, direct contact, reaching out to strangers. It's active. That means it's harder up front, but the return on your investment, you're all familiar with ROI, I'm sure, in this room, right? The return on your time investment is way more than if you just rely on those passive approaches. It's all about swimming to that island of your dreams, not just drifting around in the currents hoping they're going to take you there. That's what the active approach is about. So I talk to my clients, or my potential clients, and I ask them to get a sense of whether they are doing too much of a focus on the passive search and not enough on going out and getting what they want, the active search. That's the first thing I think about. So if I hear a client say to me, Rob, I've sent out over 100 applications or 200 applications, it's clear there are no jobs, I'm thinking, maybe there's something else going on here. Maybe they're just doing too much applying and not enough of the networking and the direct contact that they need to do to tap into that hidden job market, which is all about what the active search is. So that's the first thing I think about. The second thing I think about is how is their positioning? Are they positioning themselves for what they want or for the job they currently have, the job they came from? Just to give you an example, so I had a client here who was an accountant. And so he had an accounting background, his resume was all about accounting. But now he was a CFA charter holder, and he wanted to use that new proud certification to get a job as a portfolio analyst. So he was sending out his resume, and it was all about accounting. It was about his current role, not what he really wanted to do. So I said, you're never going to get noticed with this resume. You're not targeting your pitch, what you're saying, to the audience. So we had to redo his resume. We had to throw in lots of words involving, portfolio and analyst and things like that, and minimize the accounting aspects. And suddenly people were taking interest. So that's the second thing I think about. The third thing I think about is, are they being proactive at all stages of the search? So it's very easy to just sort of let other people sort of take control. So maybe you'll wait for somebody to contact you. You won't reach out to them. Or maybe you'll email someone, but you'll never follow up with a phone call. Or maybe you'll meet somebody and you'll have a great networking meeting, but then you'll drop the ball and you'll lose touch. You won't keep in touch with them. Those are all examples of not being proactive, of letting it go, of not taking control. You want to go out and, again, it's consistent with that going out and getting what you want. It's about always you being in the driver's seat and looking for what step can I take, not wait around for someone else to do something. Just to give you an example, I had a client recently. She had a series of interviews at this firm. They were all great interviews. It was a love fest. They loved her. She loved them. Then she met the executive vice president, the number 2 person at the company, and they had a nice conversation. Then she said, how do you feel about moving my candidacy forward? He said, frankly, we're not going to move your candidacy forward. You don't have enough strength in your analytic background. We need someone who's really strong analytic skills. And you just don't have that. So she was sort of surprised and shocked, and she just said, all she was able to say is, I'll address that. So did she just take that, like a lot of people might do? No, she didn't take it. What she did was, she wrote a really powerful follow-up letter, not a thank you letter. She wrote an influence letter. And in that letter she said, send me some data, I'll analyze it, I'll show you how good I am. So a week later, the EVP sent her a spreadsheet full of data. She spent that 3-day weekend analyzing that data, sent it back to him, said, here's the results of my analysis and my recommendations. And did she just leave it at that? No. What she did was she called the admin, got on his calendar, and made sure that she would meet with him, because she just did all this work. She was certainly not going to just wait for him to set up the meeting, right? So she met with him. Anyway, the long story short, she ended up getting the job. That's what I mean by being proactive, by taking control of your search. The next thing I ask myself when I'm diagnosing someone's search is, how are they communicating? So I've found, working with a lot of clients, that some clients are great writers, but they don't speak well. Or maybe they're great on the phone, but they're not so good in person. Or some other permutation. The bottom line is, you have to know yourself, or you have to get feedback so you can know yourself and address those issues. Because no matter, even if you're doing everything else perfectly, that could be the weak link. You're being proactive, you're taking the active approach to the search, but if you don't communicate well, it's going to be rude. So just to give you an example, I had somebody call me, a client, said, hey Rob, I want to meet with you. I'm having all these interviews, I can't seem to close the deal. So we talked for a few minutes on the phone. He sounded great. I said, I don't understand what's wrong. He really sounds like he's on top of everything and he's got his act together. So I said, let's meet. So when I met with him, in 5 minutes, I understood what the problem was. He could not make eye contact. So he was looking everywhere but at you. And I could see, he was in the same firm for 20 years, and that was just like one of his quirks. Like, they didn't care, they were used to it. But now he was looking for a job, it was hurting him. So we addressed it, and he practiced, and then that became a non-issue, and he started getting offers from those interviews. So just an example, you've got to really understand if you have any weak points in your communications. A couple of other thoughts on this checklist. are you targeting enough potential in your search? Are you targeting enough potential? So I had a client who said, Rob, there are no jobs. Or, there's something wrong. I don't know what it is, there are no jobs. I said, let's talk about what you do. So it turns out he was in a remote part of the country. He was targeting 13 hedge funds. Each of those hedge funds had only one suitable position for him. So, and they were all those positions were filled. Somebody else was in them. So it's going to take him forever to find a job at one of these 13 hedge funds because somebody would have to leave, and then he'd have to apply or compete with all the other people to get those roles. So those 13 positions, it's just not enough to land something quickly. So the rule of thumb, target 200 potential positions. Sounds like a lot, but if you think about it as open or filled, not just open, it's really not that bad. You just want to make sure you're going for enough potential in your market. Okay? Think of yourself, by the way, another way of thinking about this is you are no longer financial analysts or portfolio managers or whatever you call yourselves. You are marketers and salespeople when you're in search. That's what you are now. You have to think like that. Is there enough potential in my market, my target market? Be targeted in your approach. That's another thing I think about. Are they targeted enough? So I had a client who was saying something on his resume like, oh, I'm a portfolio manager, but I'm also a CFO, and I have expertise in accounting, and I'm a project manager. So he didn't want to rule out anything because he didn't want to miss any opportunities. But the problem was they weren't taking the time to figure out where he should be, right? Or they were putting him in a place he didn't want to be. And even more importantly, think about the person who is just a CFO or just an accountant. They are having a very targeted pitch just for that thing. His pitch is much more watered down. His resume is much more watered down because it's spread out across these 4 things. So he's not competing effectively with the people who are very targeted. So I know sometimes it's hard, you have to choose. But the more targeted you can be in your approach, the more likely people are going to understand how you can help them. And the more likely people will be able to help you get what you want. 2 more things. Put enough time into your search. So just to give you an example, I had a client who said, Rob, I don't know what's wrong. I've applied everywhere, and again, I hear the word apply, I think, maybe there's something else going on, maybe you're not taking the active approach. But I said, let me find out some more about what's going on. So I said, well, what did you do yesterday? He said, well, yesterday I had to take my son to the doctor, so I only was able to work for a couple of hours on my search. He was unemployed, he had nothing going on the whole day. I said, how about the day before? Oh, the day before I was sick, so I was only really able to work on my search for like an hour. How about the day before that? Oh, the day before that we had company over, so I really didn't get to do any work on my search. So he was kidding himself. He wasn't putting the time in. He's thinking there was no jobs, and he just wasn't doing what he needed to do. You have to invest enough time. So if you're not working, I would recommend making this your full-time job, 35 hours a week, which is really only part-time these days, right? But really, 35 hours a week, 9 to 5, take a break, right, in the middle, and then let it go. And if you are working full-time, 10 to 15 hours, that's a lot, right? If you're working, you have these hard jobs, I'm giving you a stretch goal. Try to do it. You've got to put the time in, or it's going to take a really long time for you to get a job. Which leads me to the last point. The last point is you've got to have fun. You've got to be able to let it go. So I ask my clients, are you having fun? Do you have balance in your life? Because otherwise they get too stressed out and it comes off across as nervousness or stress, which looks like a lack of confidence, like you really don't know what you're doing, or I don't want to work with you, right? So it's really important to have that balance. So what I tell clients is put the time in and then let it go, because you've just done all you can do. Hang out with your family, go to a movie, or the gym, whatever you want to do. That's not about looking for a job. So those are just a few examples of the things that I think about when I'm trying to diagnose someone's job search. I hope that it has some help for you all here. And now I want to get to the main event, which is introducing the panel. I'm really excited about this panel. I've read their bios, I've talked to them, and it's just a great panel. I'd like to start off with introducing Rob Isbitz. Rob, hey Rob. He's the founder of Sun Garden Investment Research and Investment Management and Equity Research Firm. So over the past 3 decades, Rob has managed daily liquid portfolios through diverse market conditions. He created several investment strategies, including the Sun Garden Hedge Dividend Portfolio, an alternative approach to the pursuit of income preservation and long-term growth. Rob has managed mutual funds and authored 2 books, and you can follow him on Twitter at RobIsBits. Not hard to remember.
Nothing fancy.
Right?
Nothing fancy about that.
Nothing fancy, it's great. I'm at Rob Hellmann. It's the same. You get it.
Couple of moms from New York.
Right. So next, I'd like to introduce Deborah Coplet. She's a chartered financial analyst, and she has the team, hi Deborah, of investment strategists in Florida and Texas for the Comerica Asset Management Group. And she provides direction on portfolio structure and management. So for the last 20 years of Deborah's career, she's been focused on managing trusts and portfolios for high net worth individuals. Deborah is a CFA charter holder and a member of the CFA Institute and the CFA Society South Florida. And her educational background includes the University of Chicago, where she got her MBA in finance, the London School of Economics, where she got a Master's of Science in Economics, MS in Economics, and the University of Kent at Canterbury, where she got a BA. I'd like next to introduce Aldo Hortalis. Hello, Aldo. He's the Assistant Treasurer at NextEra Energy, a leading clean energy company. He's responsible for the development and execution of the financing plan for the holding company and various subsidiaries. Mr. Hortalis is also Assistant Treasurer for Florida Power and Light Company, Lone Star Transmission, and NextEra Energy Capital Holdings. He was appointed to his current position in March 2012. He owns a bachelor's degree in finance from the University of Miami and a master's in business administration from the University of Michigan. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Anthony Young. He is, hello Anthony, he's a vice president and senior analyst covering the coal and small to mid-cap basic materials and industrial space. Anthony joined Macquarie in 2014 after a brief stint as a buy-side analyst covering the industrial space. Prior to this, he was an equity research analyst covering the mining sector for Dahlman Rose and a research associate covering the mining space at Bear Stearns. Prior to his career in equity research, Anthony was a systems engineer for Hughes Electronics and AT&T. Anthony holds a BS and MS in electrical engineering from UCLA and University of Southern California, respectively, and an MBA focused in finance from the University of Texas in Austin. So with that, I'd like to give a big hand to our panel. Welcome. And let's start off with the questions. So I would like you to, why don't we start off with Anthony. We'll go this way. Because I'd like you to each, if you can, just share something briefly about what you do or your firm that I haven't already mentioned in the bio. And I'd love to hear also what types of people succeed in your firm and what types of people don't. If you could just take a couple of minutes to share something and then give us your perspective of who succeeds and who doesn't. Anthony.
Just so as far as my firm goes, it's Macquarie. We're an Australian investment bank. In Australia, we're the second largest bank, I believe, depending on the year, either the first or the second largest bank. And so, as far as what I do, I'm a research analyst. I basically pick stocks in the spaces that you talked about, covering coal, copper, aluminum. Used to do coal, but there's not as many coal companies around anymore, unfortunately. And I guess just as far as the people that succeed at our firm, I think it's the people that are eager and are excited about finance. A lot of people want to get into finance for a number of different reasons, but if it's not something that you truly like, then it may not be the place for you, because it's definitely some long hours, and you have to be thorough, and you have to be willing to double check and triple check your work. So, if it's not something that you truly love, then it may ultimately not work out for you. It may be a good starting place for you to move on to other things. But I think, again, the people that do well are the people that really love it. And the people who don't do well are likely the people that just get into it for the wrong reasons. Whatever that may be, their parents, saw it on a movie and thought it was interesting, what have you. I guess those people oftentimes don't do as well.
Great.
I don't have a lot to add about myself. Comerica Bank is based in Texas. We were founded in 1849 in Michigan, and we moved our headquarters to Texas, Dallas in 2007. We have about 9,000 employees. We're a full-service commercial bank, and then we also have a trust department and brokerage. So we manage about $21 billion in assets, $8 billion in the trust department. We operate in Texas, in Michigan, in Florida, in Arizona, and California. In terms of who does well at our company, I think if you're hired out of school, there are many different avenues to go in, but ultimately, as you progress through the organization, no matter what area you're in, the focus is on sales. Whether it's on the investment side, whether it's on the lending side, across the board, it's sales. So you have to be effective in meeting sales goals, and those are very cut and dried. And so what I would say to anyone, going into the banking industry or going into the investment area where you're managing money and responsible for bringing in clients, because nowadays everybody is you have to be very sales focused. And if you're not, then you should think about a different area. So that would be, the most important thing I could impart.
Great.
As far as what I do, I'm responsible for executing on the financing plan of NextEra Energy, and most of you know us as Florida Power and Light. That's about a little bit more than half of our business, but we have a very large wholesale generation business throughout the pretty much the rest of the United States. We invest billions and billions of dollars every year, and my group, we're responsible for bringing in the capital that's needed to fund those investments. So we execute on all different types of financings, whether it's equity issuances, first mortgage bonds, debentures, hybrid securities, equity units, project financing, tax equity. So we are, we close easily 15 to 20 transactions a year, and I think, $8 billion a year of capital raise is not unusual for us in any given year. That said, we are an execution shop. We're kind of on the other side of the banking. We're the customers of the banks, and but even so, I think to succeed in our business, in our side of the business, it's a certain amount of sales. We're selling a product, which is the opportunity for a bank to deploy capital within our organization. We view the banks and our investors as our partners. They're people who are we're asking them to entrust us with their money, and that involves a certain amount of sales, presenting the opportunities, addressing the issues it requires to succeed. You really need to have commercial skills. You can be a very good analyst, but if you don't have the commercial skills, there's room for all types of people in our organization. We're very large. We're in Juno Beach, about an hour north of here, and I don't know the exact head count in Juno, but it's probably about 4,000 people or so, and a very large finance organization. But we've got everything from people who are pure analysts to the people in my side of the organization, where it's you need to have the strong financial skills, but you need, even more important, it's the commercial skills, being able to address issues, negotiate with the banks to come up with solutions that work for both sides. As far as people who don't succeed, there's a lot of room for people, like I said before, in our organization, but I think people who play politics, people who don't, who aren't team players, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing that really will be difficult for somebody to succeed in a big organization such as ours. We're focused on execution all the way down from our chairman to the rest of the team. It's all about execution and flawless execution. that's, you've got to be a team player and be willing to work as a team player.
And as an extra bit of trivia, your company now owns the electric company in Hawaii, don't you?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Okay. We're in the process of getting regulatory approval.
That was interesting. Thanks again to Dr. Knight for inviting me. It's great you've been doing this for 10 years. I'm going to try to give you a couple warning shots just in the beginning here. First, just to cover 30 years in about 30 seconds. I'm from the New York area. I spent the first 7 years of my career in the investment systems business, helping portfolio managers figure out how to do their accounting and analytics, things like that, all because I was trying to get into portfolio management. I then did pretty much what Deborah did. I joined a big brokerage firm, Morgan Stanley, and for the next 5 years of my career in New York, between Morgan Stanley and a place called DLJ, was able to start building a client base, and then spent the next 18 years doing what I really wanted to do in the first 12. So I kind of feel like I've been where a lot of you may have been, maybe where you are, and so let me just tell you, don't you dare give up. And all this talk about passion and what you really, really want to do. And hopefully that will be the theme of some of the contributions that we make here tonight. So our firm, 5 years ago I decided to start my own firm. I've been a partner of a firm for a while. We run the place pretty nicely. It started as my wife and me 5 years ago in the spare room of our house, and now we're managing about $160 million. I have a partner in Connecticut who handles most of the sales and marketing and business development so that I don't have to, and I can really focus on my true passion. Like I said, it took a while, but I manage investment portfolios, equity, ETF. We're kind of a hedge fund. We're not a hedge fund, but we invest like a hedge fund. We're a long-short manager that doesn't invest in hedge funds. We're managing a mutual fund a little bit later this year. It's a new development. In terms of succeeding, people who succeeded and have not, I actually have a bit of experience with people who came out of this program, and which is originally, I think, how I met Dr. Knight, because we were looking for people. I have a very short list here, but I think it's important. I don't want to miss any of it. Who succeeds? Well, at our place, we're a boutique, so we look for potential lifers, believe it or not. We want people to come in, love what we do, want to really be part of our little family, and make it happen. They have to bring their A game every day. They have to think like owners in a smaller firm. I think that goes a long way. No task is too small. They have to develop perspective a little bit more every day in their area of focus. They have to have what I call a stream of consciousness. They're not watching the clock. The day doesn't end at 5 o'clock. Even if you walk out the door, you're always on guard because it is still a client business. Doesn't matter how great our returns are if nobody's there to receive it and to pay us a fee. They have to be able to see the forest for the trees. Don't just look at what's going on in your position now. Look longer term, especially within the company. No excuses. Don't like excuse givers. People who don't understand the level of commitment and responsibility, or they think they know it all. So I'll leave it there because I know we have a lot more to get to.
Great, those are really great answers. Thank you for that. So I hope that gives everybody a little bit of a sense of what these types of firms are looking for if you're thinking about making a move. Let's talk a little bit about, let's get a little bit more specific in terms of how you source potential hires. What channels do you use to source these hires? Do you use your network? Do you use LinkedIn? Do you use ads? Do you use recruiting firms? Am I missing something? Are people that just contact you out, off the street? How do you find clients? Or how do you find the candidates for these open positions? Who would like to go first?
I just happen to have this. So.
Okay.
LinkedIn is a big one. We also use Indeed.com, which is a good place to go if you're the employer to get hundreds and hundreds of resumes. The last 2 times we did a search, we had about 250 resumes each time, most of them from Indeed. But LinkedIn, I think, is where we really kind of get a chance to take a step back, and if your LinkedIn profile is not really up to speed, and that includes some detail, a picture, a professional picture, just, you want that to be complete. I think it's where job search is going. Then again, I'm not the expert like Rob is, but I can't say enough about the ability of an employer to use LinkedIn to try to sort of separate the wheat from the chaff.
And I just want to follow up on that,
Sure.
just before you pass the mic. So when you say use LinkedIn, do you actually just say, hey, who's in my network? Is that what you do? Like, who do I know? Who can introduce me? Is that the kind of thing?
Actually, what I did is when I knew we were looking for a portfolio analyst, okay, or a research analyst, I just typed it in and it gave me a lot of people. Research analyst Florida, research analyst Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach.
Right.
As it turns out, a few of the people in this room I actually met just from those searches. They were not candidates, but yeah. So I think it's a good way to reach out, and then I would send a little note to them if they. I would offer to connect, and if they connected, then the next thing I'd say is, we're looking for something. You appear to have, on paper, the type of qualifications we're looking for. Do you want to interview?
So I just want to make a comment on that, because this is really a mirror image of what I tell clients every day, which is you've got to have the words in there in your profile so you will be found. If you don't have research analyst in your profile, you're not going to come up in Rob's search. So you got to have that in there. And you don't have to put looking for a job on your profile. He'll find you and he'll send you notes. It doesn't matter, right? If you're going to say this guy's qualified, this woman is qualified,
Always
I'm going to
respond.
send something out, and hopefully they'll be interested. If not, they'll pass it on.
And remember also, because I think you'd mentioned this before about the 13 hedge fund jobs, and that was all they had. Well, you look at the 4 speakers up here. Okay, there's 3 firms that you probably have heard of, and there's one that you probably haven't. And so this is what we need to do in order to identify people that want to work at a boutique firm. And at the same time, the people who want to work for boutique firms, just like you said before, you can't go the normal sort of herd mentality route.
Yep. Okay, great. Who else would like to comment on how you source candidates?
Okay, I can comment on that. For us, it depends on the position we're looking to fill. But I did talk to our HR and our recruiting people today, just kind of generally, what's their process. They told me that the most important thing is really the LinkedIn profile. We will post jobs online, people will apply, and 99% of the applicants are not qualified. But when they're looking for specific people, they will go and start, if I have a position in my group, I'll engage our recruiting organization. They will then start looking through LinkedIn. They've got whatever level of access that allows them to really do the really comprehensive searches. And we'll start looking specifically at, for people, and we'll reach out to people who may meet the qualifications, and then look for a way to, to see if they have an interest. They express that, it is really critical that your LinkedIn profile is very up to date, that it's frankly, they said it's more important than your resume right nowadays. So I think from our perspective, I think that, as far as starting a search, that's the, kind of a general search of, we will work with references, people we know, if somebody we know has somebody they can recommend or so forth. But I think kind of the broader search is really the LinkedIn type profile.
Okay, great. Another vote for LinkedIn. Don't have sparse profiles, right? Have them full of keywords. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. I also spoke to our HR person, and again, when we're direct sourcing, we're using LinkedIn, we're using that search engine, and she gave me keywords that she's using. She's using a zip code, a radius around that zip code. She's targeting institutions in our business that we would like to see people in similar positions. She might put in MBA, CFA. Again, if we're looking for a portfolio analyst, she's putting in the words portfolio. These are words that, if you're the CPA and you want a job as a portfolio analyst, you need to have portfolio analyst somewhere in that profile. So yeah, we do direct sourcing through LinkedIn. I'd say personally, what we're doing locally would be networking. And one of my favorite places to network is the CFA Society meetings. Because these are people I get to know, they're in my field. I can talk to people and they can tell me about other people who are looking. It's great opportunity. So that's something that I do. We also do networking at our estate planning councils, wherever we are locally, to know other professionals in our area. Because essentially, as a bank, we're not relocating people. So we are confined in our search to the local area. So it's a two-pronged approach. It's networking locally, and it's using HR to our HR department, which is in Dallas, to do direct searches for us. In terms of where we post everywhere. The listing was enormous. I mean, we have our own website where, of course, we post, but then there's also different agencies for veterans, because we like to hire diversity. We Hiring for Heroes was one of them. LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Beyond, Local Job Network, Tweet My Jobs, Indeed, Career Builder, and that was only part of the list of where our jobs are posted. So I would say that a lot of the resumes I get, there is some filter that's going through them, but I do wonder if people ever read the job posting when they respond with their resumes, because there is no match-up. So as I say, direct sourcing we find to be very helpful with LinkedIn or networking.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I guess LinkedIn also, but for the most part, I don't think that our HR people are as specific on people's profiles as much as they just use LinkedIn as a mechanism to get resumes. So definitely have good resumes, one page preferably. But yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of our postings are, I always bump into Macquarie postings on LinkedIn, and I'm not sure if that's just because it fits in that, maybe because I work for Macquarie or what exactly, but I think that for the associate positions, it's LinkedIn. For the folks right out of college, it's all done through career centers. And then for some of the more senior roles, it's sort of a mix. Headhunters extensively, but for the associate positions, sort of folks with CFAs and right out of business school, I would hunt around on LinkedIn.
Okay, great. So unanimous for LinkedIn, and networking was a close or equal footing, it sounds like, as well. And then a mix of job boards and postings. No one really mentioned headhunters. Did you? Anybody mention agencies, recruiting firms?
No, I can speak from our perspective. We, unless it's a very specific targeted search, we prefer to avoid, working with headhunters.
They're expensive.
They're expensive, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
May I? I don't even.
Yeah, we're going to do a Q&A at 8, but just quickly, if you have something, go ahead.
All right. So, my name is Philippe Audrey. I'm the Director of Finance of the Treatment Center. I've never had experience in finance before. I love my job, but after 3 years, I want to move to a new position. I do not want my company to know. Therefore, my LinkedIn profile is not going to say that I'm looking for a job, and I don't want to spread that out. So I'm working on my LinkedIn profile to have to do something with that face and so on. But it's a long process for me to search for a company without my company knowing. And I'm looking for into logistics, so it's not really your job, but it's very hard for me to connect with people that I want to work with. So I found a few different ways. I'm interviewing company as an EMBA student. I'm calling companies and I'm asking questions for my paper or whatever, and then I know more about the company. But if you keep on just fixing on LinkedIn, you might only choose the profile that are looking for a job, and not those that you might want to take out of the company to work for you.
I think from our perspective, it's actually the opposite. I mean, if we are looking for a position, I engage our HR department to do a search. They will go and look at the profiles of individuals who we think might match the skills that we're looking for, and they will reach out for individuals. It's like one of the things they said is that it's helpful is if you have your email address in your LinkedIn profile, so you don't have to go through LinkedIn. That way we can contact you directly and be able to communicate with you. But we're not necessarily focused on people who say they're looking for a job. It's what are the skills we're looking for, who matches up best, who do we think is a good match for those skills, and then we will, target, outreach to them and just say, hey, we've got this opportunity. We think it might be a good match for you. Consider applying.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I understand the need for privacy, but what's preventing you from inviting someone just to connect, and then if they agree to connect, now you've opened the door, and your employer doesn't know. Maybe you'll announce on your LinkedIn who you're connecting with.
My employer is into my connection, first of all. So whenever you post stuff or things like this, they see that your LinkedIn is getting really active.
Yeah,
And they're like asking questions.
Let me address that just briefly.
An email idea works.
You mentioned a very common issue that I see with a lot of clients. And also, I just want to say, I think after this, we're just going to hold the questions until 8 o'clock. Because otherwise, there's a lot I want to get through. This panel is going to help you all. Okay, but since you got this one in, so we'll take this stuff. Okay. So anyway, so I just, first of all, you can set your settings so they will not be notified. If this is a setting, they're not going to, you can do that. So they won't be notified if you add a new position in LinkedIn, or if you do anything on your profile, they're not going to be notified if you have your settings correctly, okay? You can remove connections if you don't want to be connected to certain people that might be, maybe just feel uncomfortable being connected to them. And also, if people do look at your profile, and you got to be careful a little about what you put on there, because it might indicate that you're looking, like maybe you want to make a career change. I'm making that up. And so you don't want to put those words in that say, if you're going from accounting to portfolio analyst, the accounting people are going to wonder if there's been all this portfolio analysis stuff on there, right? So you got to be careful. You're right, you got to be careful. There's only so much you can do with LinkedIn. That's why don't just rely on LinkedIn. Don't just rely on being found. Don't just rely, that's passive. If you're just waiting to be found, that's not enough. You've got to take that active approach. That's the point I want to make with you. Yeah, there's limits to how much you're going to be able to do to be found. Ultimately, you're going to have to go out and use your network and contact people directly, network through the CFA Society, network through lots of your alumni network, all kinds of places, and take that active approach and swim to that island of your dreams. I just want to say that. But anyway, let's keep going because we do have a lot to get to. So, okay, I want to talk a little bit about the hiring process and get your thoughts on that. So what I mean by the hiring process is, say you post a job on LinkedIn or Career Builder or Indeed or whatever. Can you tell me a little bit about the process to the extent that you know it? In other words, how many resumes do you typically receive for an open position? Is it hundreds? Is it thousands? Is it less, more? And how quickly do you receive enough resumes so you stop looking through applications? So in other words, after 2 days, are you done? So people who are sending resumes to the posting on day 3 are out of luck? That's kind of the thing I want to get a sense of. Anybody want to start? Yeah, Rob.
Yeah, I think I mentioned before, the last 2 times we searched, we ended up with 250. I think it took maybe a week or 2. We never stopped looking, because even for someone like me who doesn't, maybe once a year we go out and we try to hire, you get pretty good at reading resumes after a while. We've gone through 250 of them, and a few more isn't going to matter because we're looking for something very, very specific. And we can usually tell in probably literally a 2-second read of a resume, a couple things will stick out to us, otherwise they go in the no pile. And once we get down to maybe 3, 4, perhaps 5 people that we think really could be the one, then we start to kind of lay off, and eventually we'll just stop the posting.
Okay, so you manually go through those 250 resumes. You don't have like an applicant tracking system or something like that. Is that correct?
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, and again, we're talking about a firm that went from 2 people to 8 people, over 4 years. So we were very, very careful. I think when we do it again, probably have somebody else involved, and so.
Okay, great. Other comments?
I think from our perspective, we do get lots of applications, like I mentioned before, for every 100, maybe one or two that are qualified. There's an initial screening that occurs by our corporate recruiters if it's a general search, and then they'll pass along to me the resumes of people who we think would be a match. And to be honest, a lot of times there aren't a lot of matches even once they get past the initial screening. So it's we don't have jobs that just remain posted out there. We are, when there is a position, it's because that's posted on the web. It is because there is an opening.
Okay, great.
So we use an applicant tracking system, which is ADP, and anyone who's applying for one of our positions, whether it's we meet them through networking or direct source or filling in, from a search engine, they have to apply online. And there are certain knockout questions on that application, mostly to do with criminal records. So we don't see those resumes, they don't come through. But it doesn't really filter beyond that. So our HR department would then filter those resumes. I would say that even after our HR department has filtered the resumes, we get a huge stack of them. And again, maybe 2% is about right in terms of qualified candidates, which essentially makes my job easier because there are only a few people that I'm really going to be interviewing. Once we get very close to hiring somebody, we're going to remove that posting if we have several candidates that we think are viable.
Okay, great.
I'm not entirely certain how many resumes we get per posting, but typically HR, if we have a position open, HR will narrow it down to 3, and at that point it just typically becomes something more along the lines of personality and fit the team.
Okay, great. And let me ask you just also, the role of HR. So it sounds like you all have, Rob, I'm not sure if you have HR. Do you have a, no, you have a smaller firm.
Because it's not that often we're looking, so
Right,
it
right,
would be
right.
full-time.
I think the other 3 of you do have HR seems to have a prominent role in your hiring. Is that, could you comment on that? Like, do you need to go through them? Can they come through you directly? And you'll like them and the HR sort of rubber stamps it, or is it the opposite? Like they need to do the screening, or do you have any thoughts on that for people?
I can answer it from our standpoint. We have about 9,000 employees, so we do have, a big HR department. HR is the facilitator for us. So they can source candidates, and any candidate they source must apply online. I can source candidates through networking, but they must apply online. HR, if I'm interested in a candidate, HR would be delighted. But they can't veto any candidate. Basically, I'm the one who does the veto. The hiring manager does the vetoing. So they facilitate, and they're very good at that.
Great.
I think from our perspective, it's pretty much the same as what Deborah said. They are a facilitator, they are our partners in identifying individuals, but they may source candidates for us. We will, we may find candidates on our own. People may reach out, let's say, to one of our executives, and they may meet somebody, and we'll get a resume that comes along, and those a lot of times we'll get these exploratory interviews that it's maybe not a specific position, but it's somebody who has impressed somebody important in our organization, that then we bring them around and say, okay, this is a person of high interest within the company. Let's introduce them to to different sides of the organization to see if there is a match, for a position for them. So, the hiring is actually done by the hiring manager. HR, will do some initial screening, identify candidates, and then we do go through a background check that that is managed through HR. But that's after the candidate has been identified.
Great. Anything else on that? Okay. What I'm getting out of this is that you get a lot of resumes, very, very few make it through. And so that's a lesson to everybody. I mean, why are very few making it through? Well, first of all, they can only handle interviewing very few, but it seems like there's a huge disparity between the ones that make it through and the vast majority of them that are just so off in terms of how the people are positioning themselves. So you got to make really, so you won't be in that forget it pile. You got to really make sure that you are targeting your audience correctly with what you're putting in the resume. The phrasing and the words that you use are so important. And I see all the time with coaching clients, they just don't do that. So, yeah, you can say something.
Yeah, here's the number one thing that gets you in the no pile with us and a lot of people that I talk to. If we're putting something out, or any of us are, that's a very specialized role, and your career objective says to obtain a position in finance, okay? So, in other words, I know it's probably tough. You're trying to apply 200 jobs, that every one should be unique, but for the ones you really, really want, or you think you really, really want, take it as personalized and attack to that position as possible.
Great, thank you for that. So, just again, the thing like looking for a position in finance, I see that type of verbiage in the resumes I critique all the time. You know, it's just broad and nebulous, and it can be like 10 or 50 different targets. So you gotta be more specific. So, yeah, great point. So, I want to talk a little bit about the role of references and background checks. So, to the extent that you can share this, like, I would love to hear a little bit about how important references or referrals are. Anything, you know, referrals, references, background checks, how important are they in your hiring process? Do you always go through a background check? Do you always need to get references? That kind of thing.
At our company, referrals are kind of at the discretion of the hiring manager and of the HR rep as far as, you know, whether they follow through on some of them. A referral from somebody we know is you know, it's golden. I mean, I think that gets you, you know, it brings you instant credibility. And like I said before, you know, it can even, you know, if somebody's impressive enough, we will do, you know, exploratory interviews where it's just, you know, a full day of meeting with people, you know, to see if there's a match within the company. And that's not always a senior person. It could be somebody who, you know, who's impressed somebody, one of our executives, let's say, you know, at some event or something that you know, that we, you know, it's somebody who really gets special attention. As far as background checks, everybody who is hired by our company does go through a background check, but again, that's at, you know, once a person has been identified as a candidate for a position, and I think it's after actually an offer has been extended. So I think that's.
We typically ask for 3 references, 1 personal, 1 professional, and 1 of their choice. It would be 2 personal, 1 professional, etc. And references, you know, there was a time we didn't ask for references, and I'm going all the way back to 1998 when I started a firm with 2 other folks, and this is why we now always use references. We needed somebody to come in and basically run the office. And we went through, found somebody after a fairly, I mean, it's 1998, you know, the internet wasn't what it is today, nor was I. But you know, we brought this person in, and we might have interviewed 3 or 4 people that we had kind of run into, and I can't remember how she got there. So this is what happens in the first 2 days, all right? She stays late, which looks really good, and then my partner gets the phone bill and says, she was here like 3 in the morning making personal phone calls. Turned out she was having a problem with somebody in her family. And then I guess it was maybe day 3 or day 4 where she had to leave early because she had to go to the veterinarian because her pet pig was ill. And Anyway,
Right.
Those
Okay.
pot-bellied pigs are very affectionate. They really are our dogs.
so yeah, references, pretty important.
So I'll take the opposite end, and this is probably because, we're a huge firm. And so our policy is, essentially, we don't look at references. We don't ask for references. We conclude that anyone who's going to give a reference is going to give a good reference. So we don't use them, and also our employees are not allowed to give references when somebody leaves the firm. So be that as it may, that's what we do. Which means that, yes, you can make a mistake, and so we have, I guess it's a 60 or 90-day trial period, where if somebody's not working out, we would let them go, and that would not be, that would be it. In terms of background checks, we do not do credit checks. There is some debate in the organization about whether we will or not, but we do not. Which I think is a good thing, because it doesn't penalize anyone who's unemployed or who had problems. It may be an issue if somebody's going to be a lender and they're in debt and bankrupt, but be that as it may, we do not do credit checks. We do drug test screening, we do criminal background checks, and we verify everything that's on the resume. So if you list your education, we are going to verify every school that you went to and when you attended. If you list employers, we're going to verify all that. So if somebody is putting something down that's inaccurate, even if we've offered the job, we would then rescind that offer. It would be that tight. That's about it.
Can I say something? I think that is a very good point, that whatever you put in your application, whatever you put in your resume, it's got to be accurate. No misrepresentations. I think when somebody runs into an issue in an organization, in particular a large organization, and if there is looking for grounds for dismissal, falsification of a job application is one of the easiest grounds for dismissal that can be identified. So I think that people should be realize that just hangs there, not just for your initial application, it's for your entire career. So,
And by extension, I think we'd say the same thing about your history on social media. We've disqualified many people because they got to maybe the final, let's say, we're going to 250 resumes, we're going to do 15 10-minute phone calls, and then we're going to narrow it down to 3 or 4 in-person interview and hire somebody. That's typically the way it's gone. But once you get down to maybe that 15 we're going to talk to, now, a lot of things show up on social media that you forgot about. So make sure it's clean and airtight.
Yeah, on that note, does anybody else want to comment on that? On social media, do you ever Google your?
We do. HR does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess they find some interesting things. You want to make sure your picture on LinkedIn is an appropriate professional picture.
Mm-hmm.
That would be another red flag.
If you happen to have any examples of things that might have disqualified people, if you don't, it's no problem. But if anybody wants to share one, I think it might be useful.
I don't know, some people post their pictures of their dogs on LinkedIn, that's the picture. It doesn't I haven't seen the pig yet, though. That would have been a tip-off.
Well, remember, that was back in '98, so there was no LinkedIn.
Do not post a picture of your dog as you on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Important takeaway.
and it should be a professional picture.
Yes,
Don't
exactly.
not a picture in a T-shirt sitting at the beach. It should be something that looks professional.
Yeah, you want to be unique and you want to stand out, but for the right reasons.
Right. Anybody, what about just very quickly, does anybody have any thoughts on LinkedIn recommendations? And there's recommendations and there's endorsements. Maybe, do you put any value on recommendations, and how do you compare them to endorsements?
I agree with Deborah. Chances are that if it's references, et cetera, they're gonna, they're gonna only put the ones out there that are favorable. So it's, there's some bias there. If there's something in a written recommendation that really stands out to us, then we'll say, okay, that's something in the plus column. It would have to be something really unique, not just they do a tremendous job and they're very responsible, et cetera.
Any other thoughts on recommendations, LinkedIn recommendations? LinkedIn recommendations in particular. Okay, let's talk a little bit about resumes and LinkedIn profiles. So I want to get a sense from you all as to what jumps out, what's most interesting to you, what kind of screening criteria do you use on resumes and or LinkedIn profiles? And also, what are your biggest turnoffs? What about your biggest turnoffs in resumes or LinkedIn profiles?
I guess I'll start with resumes again. The main thing is you have to be able to explain yourself in one page. I think that picking stocks and pitching stocks to investors, you have to be concise, and I saw a 3-page resume one time for someone who was just in college, which was interesting.
Confused resume with transcript.
Yeah, I think being concise and also being able to show more than just classes and previous experience with jobs. Being able to give some flavor of like what you do in your free time, whether that be sports or foundations or endowments or whatever else you may be involved with. I think is something that adds more flavor to a resume than someone that's just taken the finance classes and done the internships and that sort of thing. So I think that's what makes a resume more interesting to me, at least.
So I would agree with everything that you said. The one thing that really turns me off is, when I'm looking at sentences in a resume and I really don't understand what the applicant is saying. It's like they're using some kind of cliche or something that they picked up, and it's words that sound good, but I don't know what they mean. And if they're wasting that page to do that, it makes no sense. So what you have to do when you're writing a resume, you have to be absolutely crystal clear. Use plain English. Make sure everything is grammatically correct and spelled correctly. And make sure that you're posing things in such a way that it looks like accomplishments rather than just a liturgy of things that you've done over time, or you've got to distinguish yourself in some way. So it's got to be action-oriented, it's got to be achievement-oriented, concise. That's really important. One page.
I couldn't agree more about the one page. I mean, when I see somebody coming out of school and they hand me I get a 2-page resume. A resume for me, like if I get a stack, it's gonna, if I spend a minute on it, it's probably, unless it catches my eye immediately, it's almost like, one's looking for a reason to disqualify somebody. Not that I'm saying I'm not giving people a fair chance, but it's, you've got to go through that process pretty quickly. Make sure there aren't any grammatical errors, there are spelling errors. And one thing that, in talking to our HR person today, she was telling me that's important is, in most cases, you have to upload a resume into a system. So like if you apply to our company, you've got to upload your resume. And you may have a resume that looks beautiful on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, but when it gets transposed into a whatever the system is called, the candidate system, it doesn't look good. And it just, a lot of our initial screening, for example, is occurring through the candidate's system, and that just works against your favor if something had a lot of very fancy formatting and so forth that just that doesn't transpose into a database that well.
So I agree with all the above, but also I do a lot of writing, you mentioned books, but I also write a column every week for Market Watch, an investing column. And I guess maybe because of that, because I'm used to putting things out there for mass consumption, they have to really be well written. And I guess in my head I've got this image of that classic scene where the mother is talking to her insolent child and she's saying, use your words. Okay, so whatever words you have that really describe what is special and different about you versus the other 250 to 2,000 people that are out there trying to get the same thing you are, use them. And because until you get a chance to demonstrate your passion for what you really want to do and do it live in front of a potential employer, you got to do it on paper. And I think in a world of texting and LOLs and WTFs and whatever, like they say in Modern Family, why the face? So I think it especially for people in my generation, people that are younger, to be able to show that you're more than that really helps you get in the door. Well written, professionally written, and interesting to read.
I'd like to add something. When we're looking to hire somebody and they're straight out of college, we know they don't have the experience. I mean, that's what we're going to give them. We're going to train them. But what do they have? They have potential. And what we can't teach them, or what we don't want to teach them, because they should already have it, is good communication skills. So whether that's, it runs the gamut. It's spoken, oral communication skills, it's written communication skills, it's presentation skills, it's selling themselves, it's also selling their experiences in that resume. And to me, that's how you differentiate yourself. You may not have achieved anything in terms of financial analysis because that wasn't your job, right? But you may well have achieved things in college, in terms of leadership, in terms of things you did in the classroom that distinguished you, and those you want to hone in on, so that when we look at that resume, we think, okay, here is somebody who has potential, and it's identifiable here. This is somebody I want to talk to. And that's what we've got to try and get across in one page.
If you don't have the experience, you may have the elements. And I think that's what they were saying.
All right, which really leads me to my next question about in terms of if you don't have the experience, if there's some kind of, let's say there's a gap, say somebody's unemployed. They haven't worked 3 months, 6 months, and how does that figure into your thought process about whether you're going to talk to them or not? Or, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I
Or
could.
let's say even a year. They're in bad work for a year. You don't know why, but it's just they haven't done anything on their resume for last year.
This is a very fickle environment that we're in, and certainly jobs have been at some times plentiful, at some times totally sparse over the last 10 years. I would say that we don't penalize people at all. What we would want to understand, if this person we were going to interview them, is what was happening during that period. Were they traveling the world, or were they actively looking for a job? What was working, what wasn't working? But no, I would definitely not hold it against them.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think it's a bit different than it was in the past. Gaps in the resume, a lot of banks went out of business, Bear Stearns and Brothers, a whole host of other second and third tier banks. Companies go out of business. Intel laid off 12,000 people or something yesterday. So gaps in the resume, just, it's just part of where the economy is right now. And I think that, some people will look down on that possibly, but, I find it hard to believe in this day and age.
I think from my perspective, it's very similar, as long as somebody can explain what the situation was, we wouldn't hold it against them. In some ways, sometimes I'll see resumes that somebody, you can tell there's a gap and they have, an independent consultant, and I've had people come in and then tell me, these really grandiose things that they were doing, that they kind of overplay really what they would likely be doing as an independent consultant. And in some ways that, kind of plays unfavorably, at least with me. I'd rather see somebody, who can explain a gap. They may be doing some projects, but don't overplay what somebody's doing if they're, filling in some time between jobs as doing consulting work.
Like I said before, the first 7 years of my career, I was trying to get into portfolio management. I was around it, but I wasn't there. And to me, that's kind of like a gap in the resume. If you can, like everybody else said, if you can explain it. But to me, if someone has been unemployed recently, and they seem to have the basic, elements, like we said, I'm particularly intrigued because they will be, I think, that much more grateful, and skills and camaraderie usually leads to loyalty. And like I said, we're looking for lifers.
Right.
So, and sometimes, I'm not saying that you should leave a gap in your resume on purpose, but I'm not well played. But but there's certainly. But I think if you have a gap, you should explain it in the resume. Don't let us try to figure it out.
So I think it's really heartening to hear all that, and I told clients that too. I mean, the world has changed, so it's great to hear you say that as well. That 15 years ago, maybe a gap might have been a little bit tougher. Now, with all the turmoil, yeah, we've all had it, or some. We all know friends that have had gaps and they're great. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about getting interviews. And I wanted to ask you all: have any of you ever received a cold email or a cold call just from someone you didn't know, and it persuaded you to meet with them? Like they wanted to meet with you in that email about something. You said, you know what? I like this email. I like this call. I'm going to meet with them. I would love to hear, first of all, if you have received those. Secondly, if you have actually decided to meet with somebody like that, and what was it that made you decide to meet with them, if indeed you did decide? Anybody have any experience in that?
My answer is really quick to that. No, but if somebody did and it was heartfelt, passionate, and targeted, at the very least, I would want to try to help them, even if it has nothing to do with our little place.
Okay, great.
I think it's a great offensive move, professional offensive move.
I've not had that experience. I think there have been situations, I think, where people have reached out to individuals within our company, and they have been successful in kind of making that initial connection. But from a personal experience, I haven't had that.
Okay.
No, I haven't had it either. Quite willing to meet with somebody and provide some help if we possibly can, advice. But if we're not looking for a position, we can't create it. But we can help in that way.
Great.
I get those emails all the time. And I don't respond to them. But if someone calls me, I will talk to you. And then if you were to follow up with the email, it'll be more effective. Because, just a sort of random email to start a conversation, there's, a lot of different people out there. And just that, there's just a lot of emails, and emails are very easy to send out, and you can tell some of them are foreign emails and what have you, and it's just not that effective a route to go, in my opinion, at least for me. But that being said, if someone will call me and say, hey, stumbled across whatever posting, I'd be happy to talk. And I've actually had a couple of those calls, and it didn't ultimately work out for the person, but I think it was probably more fruitful for them, or it could have been.
Great, great. So I really appreciate those comments, and I think the lesson for everybody is there's a great openness to be having you reach out to them cold. Some might prefer email, some might prefer a call, like in your case, Anthony. So maybe a combination is the best, you know, try both. But it's how you communicate that's going to be the key. So that's what I'm getting from what you're saying. Like if you can say something that's interesting or persuasive, there may be an openness to talking with you. And I can tell you from my own experiences with clients, this can be extremely successful if you know how to communicate effectively through the email or the call. If you can have an impressive pitch or say something that shows that you get them or understand them. So
who doesn't appreciate someone trying to make their own job just a little bit easier?
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, yeah, great.
Hiring's not easy.
Yeah, one thing I would say is if somebody is sending an email, make it concise. Don't, I get probably on a typical day hundreds of emails, of which a lot of them, are, I know, I don't even open because I just, I need to be selective as to what I open. And if you're cold calling on an email, I would try to get your message across very quickly, and in that first paragraph, catch my eye, because the likelihood of being able to spend much time reading a multi-page email is very low.
Great.
You want to open the door, but not open it and keep it open for so long that you close it at the same time.
Right. Great. Okay, let me ask you a little more on the topic of getting interviews. When you receive a cover letter attached to a resume, what do you think about, so it's an application, somebody applied and you get a cover letter with it. How do you feel about the cover letters? Are some helpful or some not helpful? Are they all unhelpful? Or what are your thoughts about cover letters?
Same as above. I mean, from what we just said, not a forever letter. If it's pointed, if it's obvious that it was written. The thing I'm amazed by is how many people apply and seem to be serious in applying to work with us, and they haven't read our website. Okay, they have. I left that word. All right, they haven't done their due diligence. Okay, you explain it very simply, Anthony. You research equities to figure out what to buy, right? I mean, that's basically it. That's a lot of due diligence. If somebody were to just take a sort of broad brush, mass approach to wanting to work for you or with you, you know right off the bat they're not qualified because they didn't put any effort into the first step. To me, the hiring, I should say, the application process of pursuing a job, it's a metaphor. You need to make sure you point out that it's a metaphor for how you will be if you're the one who gets the job.
Great. Any other comments on that, or is it? Nope. Okay, great. So we're coming towards the end here, and we're going to do the Q&A, and I want to end on interviewing best practices. So I'd love to hear from each of you about how you like to interview. Like, what's your approach to interviewing? What types of questions? Maybe you give a certain format, or do you think about it really at all? You just want to have a conversation with people? Or what's your approach to interviewing?
It's like they teach you in, well, I'm taking a sales course ever, but I think the way they teach you in sales marketing, you want them to do as much of the talking as possible. So I know and what we usually do is when they get to the point where they come to the office, 2 or 3 of us will be there, usually just 2 at a time because it's probably too intimidating. But we'll have other people kind of float by, sit in the conversation for a few minutes, and we want to hear them talk, and we want to hear their questions for us. And depending on how that goes, at some point we will ask them a few pointed questions to see if they've done their research, not just on the industry, but on this type of position, and certainly on us, because you have to, like I said before, you have to make a bit of an effort to know who Sungarden is.
Okay.
With us, the interview process is a pretty extensive one. Typically a candidate who comes in for an interview might have anywhere from 4 to 6 interviews. In some cases, it's a full day. And one of the important things is that people need to be able to respond, to the first a candidate just as well as the last candidate. I had when I spoke to my HR person today, she said there was somebody who came in and I think it was a full day of interviews. By the end of the day, they thought they were doing great. The last interview was a vice president who was in charge of the business unit, went in and just said, you know, do you have any questions? You know, it's the end of the day. I'm sure you've spoken to a lot of people. And the person said no. And needless to say, the person didn't get the job. You know, so have as much enthusiasm with the first person who's interviewing you as the last. For my personal style, I like to have a kind of, I'll have some, you know, pre-planned questions, but it's really kind of a conversational type approach, and you know, try to get the candidate to, you know, to really speak about themselves, and you know, I'll probe some, you know, technical areas, but you know, really a lot of times my focus is, you know, our gauging individuals' communication skills, their ability to work as part of the team, and you know, understanding, you know, some of their technical capabilities and commercial skills. You know, for us, commercial skills are critical.
When somebody's hired by a company, they've usually gone through probably half a dozen interviews, probably not all on the same day. It's tough to coordinate because we have people in Texas who interview them as well as locally. I would say that the interviews by the HR department are very different from the interviews that I would conduct. HR is going to look at a lot of personality responses, and you know, the typical questions you would get is, you know, how have you overcome adversity? Give me an example of a hurdle you have to, you know, you came up against, and how did you deal with that? It's almost sort of generic things that HR would be asking. From my standpoint, depending on who I'm hiring and what level, I'm going to be looking for some very specific things in terms of how I can see people thinking, what I can perceive as their organizational skills, their level of efficiency, which you can gauge by how people are talking to you and responding to questions. So that would be key. Also, we have a particular investment approach, which involves working as an investment strategist and using open architecture. So rather than buying stocks, we're buying managers. I have to be sure that somebody that I'm working with or interviewing is going to be accepting of that approach, which is very different from the old-fashioned way of doing things. So there are things that I'm looking for specifically, but mostly I prefer to go out to lunch with people, because then you can get to know the person as a whole, and really maybe over the course of an hour and a half, I wouldn't say they're letting their guard down, but you get to see the person underneath. And that's what I'm really much more interested in. Is this somebody who's going to fit in with our group? And when I say fit in with the group, what's important to me when I hire somebody isn't somebody who's the same as everybody else at our firm. It's somebody who may well be different, because I'm looking for different ideas. And when you have everybody homogeneous, they're all going to be providing the same kind of answers. So I'm looking for that diversity. I'm looking for that dynamic tension in who I'm hiring. I'm not looking for disruption, but I'm looking for somebody who may think a little bit differently, and that's going to contribute to our team. And I think, Jim, you would say we've got that, right?
Definitely.
We do. So my approach is much less formal, but yeah, I'm more like a shark. I'm looking for specific things.
I guess the first thing I'd say on interviewing would be, you know, irrespective of where you are, if you haven't done interviewing in a long time, just grab a friend and practice. You know, I think that interviewing is a skill set unto its own, and it's not necessarily a natural one. So, I mean, you know, just sitting down across from someone is a little bit different than, you know, hanging out at home or on the couch or in a restaurant or what have you. So just going through that exercise, I think, is helpful. And then as far as the way that I like to interview, you know, I think that when you're pitching stocks, it's really just telling a story. And the ability to tell the story of whatever your starting point is, if it's graduating from high school through college and sort of the build up to how you got here in front of me, is, I think, one of the more effective ways I've found of, if you're able to pitch yourself, you're able to pitch a stock. So, and I think, to the point earlier about everything being sales, I think that, that story that you're telling is your sales pitch to the person across the table from you. And so that's how I typically go about interviewing. I don't do stock pitches just because I feel like typically there's an information advantage to my side of the table versus where they are, because I do this all day. But that's something that some folks in my office like to do. So I'd be prepared for that, and I'd be prepared for balance sheet and cash flow questions, because some people like to do that also. But from my perspective, I kind of stated how I like to go about things.
Okay, just a couple more questions on the interviewing. I want to talk about the interview follow-up. So you probably all get thank you letters if you've interviewed people. I'm sure most of you have written thank you letters.
And are amazed when we don't.
You're amazed when you don't. So my question is, has any follow-up ever helped you to choose that candidate or even turn a no into a yes? And what was it about that follow-up that made that happen? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And maybe the answer is no, it's never. In our initial impression, that was it. But if your mind was changed by the follow-up, or maybe your decision was made, it would be great for the audience to hear that, why that was.
We had one situation like that. Didn't end up hiring the person, but it did get them a live interview. We went beyond the phone interview. And he'd done his homework. I mean, he made a very coherent case for why we should see him in person. And I ended up not getting the job, but I'll tell you what, I certainly remember him. And if we were growing and growing and I ran into him again, I would want to know how he's doing and if he was able to make the conversion. It was an interesting situation. He was in our business, but he was in it in Latin America and had never worked in our industry here. That wasn't a strike against him at all. There were some other things versus the other candidates, but I mean, it was a pretty passionate letter. I remember something, I will treat your company like the most precious jewel. But I had talked to the guy on the phone, and I believed him from what I heard on the phone. Again, didn't get him the job, but did it get him an interview? Heck yeah.
I've not had that experience.
Precious jewel, just remember that's the phrase. Start with the resume and then just keep reiterating.
How long you're saying you haven't had that experience?
I haven't had that experience that I can recall.
Okay. So none of you had.
I've never had an experience where a thank you letter got someone the job, but it's, when you interview, if you interview 5 or 6 people over the course of the day, you can typically tell who's going to send you a thank you letter. You just can sense whether people are conscientious. It's sometimes, I think that I was interviewing maybe back in February or something, and interviewed like 6 people, and I was like, oh, this guy's definitely sent me a thank you letter. He didn't, and it was kind of surprising. I think he still got another round of interviews, so it's not, if you don't send one, it's not like it's a complete, it's a strike against you. Maybe it's just, for whatever reason, thank you letters just aren't what you do, but I haven't had a situation where someone sent a thank you letter and then they progressed.
I have found a remarkable lack of urgency from, let's say, people who are within 3 to 5 years of being out of school. People in their early to mid, maybe late 20s. That a lot of them don't. So that's good news for all of you who do, because to people my age, we still remember when that mattered and it was really important.
So they'll stand out if they, versus the people who don't bother?
Well,
They will stand out a little.
they might be able to stand out, but at the very least, it's not going to be a strike against them, whereas it would be with other people.
Right, it would be with people who don't even bother.
Yep, you're
They
just
don't
trying,
care.
you're just trying to pick them off, you know, one at a time and stay in the game.
There you go. So, on that note, I think we're going to open up to the Q&A. At the very end, I'd love to just get your final thoughts, maybe after the Q&A, just like any parting words of advice. So, who would like to ask a question? And we should pass the mic around here. Please. There were two. Oh. There was another one.
It's right here.
I don't know, do we need a mic? Any questions? Oh, go ahead.
With so many resumes that are rejected in your process, are there any single identifiers, what characteristics do you think is that the talent pool is so shallow? Because from what I've heard, you said, 250 will come in and you'll interview 5, 10. So of the 250 that are coming in, are those folks, in terms of the talent that you're looking for, is that specific skill set not there? So essentially, the pool of available candidates is in fact really small.
Either that or we're not doing a good job of allowing them to find us. Because I know what, we would get more and more specific each time we would put out the job description. It would say things like, you must have, et cetera. And we'd still get people who were, like assistant manager at Burger King or something,
So is it then the candidates are not reading, or they don't read carefully?
I can only imagine that, especially, this is much more on Indeed than it is on LinkedIn, but I think on Indeed, I imagine, Robert, that there's something where if you just say, automatically send my interest to anything that has these words in it. That's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By the way, brought a few door prizes, so perhaps maybe the first few people who ask questions, if you'd like some chocolate, some Sun Garden chocolate. No, he's not eligible.
Great. I have a question. Who else? I want to just give some, there. Yeah, sorry.
One-page resumes. You guys all said that the one-page resume is essential. I just spoke with a recruiter probably about 2 weeks ago, and it was kind of like a casual interaction, and I gave them a one-page resume, and they told me the opposite. You need to have a two-page resume, or as much detail as you could possibly give about your financial experience at your previous jobs, basically. And I thought one page would probably be enough to describe what I've done, but I guess just to reiterate, it's one page, right? One page is the number.
Let me answer that before you do.
Yeah.
Because I have a different point of view, and I understand why you're saying one page, because you get a lot of resumes. Probably most of the resumes you get are really poorly written. So who wants to read 2 pages of poorly written text, and phrases?
That's okay, we never read the second page.
Yeah, it's too much, and I agree. I mean, I get these resumes before, and then I help them and make them great for the after, and the problem is that they're poorly written. If you have a really well-written 2-page resume, which has a powerful summary section, so Anthony, you will be grabbed in that first 10 seconds if you look at it. Right away, you're going to see at the very top, wow, this person is doing exactly what we need. Then you're going to maybe read on or say maybe. And then it can be a longer resume. You're not going to say it's 2 pages, I'm going to throw it away if you were enthralled in that first 10 seconds. That's my guess, and the reason I say that is because I've had so many client success stories with longer resumes because they're constructed to grab your attention in those first 10 seconds. That's my 2 cents.
How about a one-page resume, but an extended LinkedIn profile, which you can direct them to? Does that work?
Yes.
May not work. It may not work because sometimes LinkedIn is only one. You can only have one profile. With your resume, you can have one resume for each job target. So LinkedIn, you have to combine sometimes job targets. If you have more than one, it might not work. It might or it might not. It might be a good idea for some people. Also, I'm sorry, just one last thing I want to say. You mentioned new college graduates, and they have these 2-page resumes. I agree. You just don't. Who has experience for two full pages when you're just graduating college, something is wrong. Usually it means it's a poorly written resume, so I would agree with that comment. I'm sorry.
So I would just add, I mean, if somebody has 20 years' work experience, I can see spilling over into 2 pages. But more often than not, people are spilling over into 2 pages because they've job hopped. And that is probably the biggest turnoff that I have, you know, and HR has when they look at somebody who's had 18 months experience, 2 years, next job, next job, next job. And, you know, if somebody does that for 2 decades, they go on to 3 pages. Well,
You can't be a lifer 1 year at a time at a job.
no, what do you accomplish? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you for all this, but I really want to see. I have a very different point of view of this, of what's going on right now. When we get interviewed by employer, we have this power struggle. You hear and we hear. And we're kind of like, you know, shaking what's going on, what's going to happen to me and everything. And I've decided for my career.
Why, if you're a really good candidate,
Because you have this,
turn the table.
you always have this kind of like fear of not doing well or not speaking well,
So
or
what,
maybe
there's
saying the
another-
wrong thing.
there's another one tomorrow.
But let me tell you what I believe. I believe that, especially for the young that are graduating right now, you must choose your company because this company must fit you. What do you want to do? What is the career you want to have? And I've decided to research the company that I want to work for, and then I go through the networking. So I'm using me as a student. I'm sending email or stuff. You know, I'd like to interview you for my paper of leadership or whatever it is. And then I meet them and I talk to them and I really conduct an interview. And I've noticed that it works. I mean, I didn't get a job yet because I didn't find a company that I really like. But I think we should really reverse because it's always, you know, we are like, oh, well, this is who I am and stuff. No, I want to know who you are before I get into the interview. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying here.
We have to look at the interview as a two-way process.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're looking at us, and we're looking at you.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to feel that you're down here and we're up here, because we may offer you a job, and you may decide, no, there's no way I'm going to work for that firm.
True. But it's easy. It's easy
yeah.
if you have already a job and you're looking for another one. You have this position. But if you've been unemployed for a few months or maybe a year,
Yeah.
you have this position where you feel, well, I'm just going to get the job and that's it. Because,
I would say, if I'm interviewing somebody and they haven't taken the time to research our
Your
firm
company, yeah.
and understand what it is we're looking for, that's a big turnoff. We want somebody who's interested, and we want people who are self-confident. You can always overlook initial nervousness
Yeah.
in an interview because, we're all human, right? But you don't want somebody who's going to be crippled by that throughout the whole interview, because then you're going to wonder, well, how is this person going to perform? So ultimately, you would expect them to come out of their shell.
Yeah.
To add to that.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I mean, one of the things that I think you need to recognize as a candidate is that the company that you're interviewing with is looking to fill a need, and they are actively seeking out individuals to so like in my case, a lot of times, especially with the more junior people, a lot of the entry-level positions in my organization, I've got the cash management area that reports to me, and it's the more, we hire, the more junior people right out of school in those positions. And when they're coming to me, my interview, I'll do a little bit of interviewing, but my job is to sell the company and to convince you why you want to work for us. And I think it's, you got to view an interview as a two-way street. It's like, you are selling yourself, but the company is also trying to recruit you to join the organization, because we need highly qualified people for our organization. So it's the nervousness is understandable, and I've been nervous in interviews before, but it's a communications process. It's not it shouldn't be viewed as intimidating.
And you know why this works? Because life is too short. And you don't have to find the exact best right job right now, but you certainly don't want to get into some. I mean, one of my very first jobs, I came home day one, and I said, I can't believe I just took this job. You don't want to have your own buyer's remorse. And the other thing is, I think the way the world works today a little bit more, I mean, we actually take this same approach to prospective clients now. We explain to them the first discussion, you're interviewing us, see if there's a fit, and we are doing the same thing. And we're not afraid to turn down business, even if it's lucrative, because life's too short. And it's the same thing, I think, with looking for a position. The biggest problem I think you'll have is if you haven't worked enough in your mind and in your research to figure out what that ideal position is and try to get as close to it as you can.
Great. Klaus?
Yeah, what advice would you give like an unconventional candidate, like someone who's making a more like radical career shift and looking for a position at your company? Maybe they did something kind of totally different, went back to school. What kind of advice would you offer them?
When you went back to school, you're showing the initiative, so that's the first thing you should be waving the flag for.
Yeah, to me, I mean, I don't have a problem with unconventional candidates. I was talking to somebody today, and our CEO was, I think, a history major in college. He went and got his MBA, so and had a career in consulting before, and with GE. So there's not, you don't have to come with an undergraduate business degree and then an MBA, and in our area, I'm just trying to think. I think most of the people do have some type of business background, but engineers, are get positions as well as liberal arts majors. We, basically we focus on identifying people who are bright, who are capable of learning, because I'll tell you, half of what I do in any given day is it's learning something new. In my job, I am dealing with new financial products, and and we may be, last year I was figuring out, okay, how do we go about issuing equity for a yield co? And so it's the capability and have this basic skill set, but if you come to my organization, the reality is you're very likely not going to have the skills that we can say, you've got the perfect background and experience in what we do. It's really you've demonstrated that through your achievements today that you are capable of success, that you have the good communication skills and the basic fundamentals, and then we will teach you the skills that you need to do your job.
And I would just say also, wouldn't ever refer to yourself as an unconventional candidate. When I went to business school, I was an engineer
Working
before.
for politicians.
And then after business school, I went and worked in finance. And I guess some people would think of that as being unconventional. But if you're corresponding with people, or if you're networking with people, and you're like, oh, I'm an unconventional candidate, I don't have the same background. People are always looking for an excuse not to hire someone versus hiring someone. And if you already put yourself in that category as unconventional, they're like, oh, I don't want to take a chance there because there's all these other people out there who are conventional.
Yeah, in the back.
Okay, I have a question first for you and then for the panelists. Mr. Hellmann, what are some suggestions for international students to stand out among job applicants and not be discarded because of their status? And then for the panelists, what are their hiring experience with this international, when you encounter international students?
So I want to share and understand the question. You're saying, how can international students stand out given the fact that their status is maybe considered a drawback to their candidacy? Is that what you're saying?
No. He's talking about immigration.
I mean, because realistically, we have a disadvantage that at the end of the day, we have to find a sponsor, a company that we want to sponsor.
Yeah.
Right.
So that sometimes is a turnoff for some companies.
Yep.
So I'm saying like, so what are some suggestions for us? Because obviously we have to compete also, even though we have disadvantage. And so I'm asking like, what are some suggestions just to stand out and not be just discarded right away?
Got it. So just very quickly, first of all, you know, a lot of companies who will, you have to find the companies that will sponsor, that will be open to that, you know. A lot of the larger organizations are set up to do that kind of sponsorship, but not always. Some smaller organizations as well. But you can you can find out through your network which are the companies that are more open to that, and maybe focus your efforts on that.
Right.
And so that's you. So remember I talked about the active approach to the job search, like going for what you want, right? Not waiting for the ad to show up. This is a perfect example of that, because you have to target the companies that are most likely to be receptive to, you know, to your situation. So that's how I would think about it first. Like making it, it's even more important you have that active approach to the job search. On top of that, you know, in terms of standing out, there's really nothing more that you need to do versus anybody else here in terms of standing out. You've just got to show them how you're different from the competition. This is not just for you, it's for everybody. Why you and not somebody else? And that's, you know, you got to think about that and craft your pitch around that. So I'll turn it over to the panel.
Aren't there companies, I swear I've gone, because we had an H-1B candidate who was an intern for a while, and so we contemplated this before. I thought that you could find lists of companies that tend to be favorable toward this, right?
Yeah.
So that may be the first place to start.
Yeah, no, I definitely, like, my job search is definitely towards that. But I was just saying, because I think for me the hardest step is the beginning, like get the interview and that kind of stuff. Because I know for a fact, like when I get the interview, or you know, I can like communicate to the employer and everything. But that like first step, like try to stand out to actually like get interviews, because I've had experience doing the job search, and you know, and I've talked to other international students, and it's like, you know, not like talk wrong about companies, but some of the times, like they say international student, even though they're open, like I found like, is there a way that we can like try to do something different?
I don't want to spend too much time on this because we're coming towards the end, but I just want to say that it's hard for everybody to stand out. It's you may think, oh, it's because I'm an international student. Some people think it's because I'm too old. Some people think it's because I don't have enough experience. Sometimes you're right. You might be, but very often it's not that. It's just that there's a better way of going about getting that checklist I was talking about earlier. You may want to think about that. And again, target the right companies. If you target the right companies, you may not have those barriers that you're thinking are because you're an international student. So that's how I would think about it. Yeah?
Actually, a two-part question. One, if you list a position that you're looking ideally for a certain amount of experience, a certain number of years, do you or does your system automatically rule out a candidate who does not fit within those parameters? And is the second part to that, would you be more concerned with a candidate who is overqualified in that regards or underqualified in that regards? Again, if you'd be willing to consider.
I'm going to punt on that one because, there's, our hiring is a little less frequent probably than the bigger companies.
I can respond to that. We would set the minimum requirements, the lowest bar possible, and that would be established by an employee within the organization who had that position. So, because otherwise we would be discriminating. So we would say, okay, we need 5 years experience, work experience, relevant or whatever it is. And that would be non-negotiable. But essentially I might be looking for somebody with 10 or 15 years experience, but the bar would say 5 years. We might say, you need a college degree. I might be looking for somebody who has a CFA or an MBA. And in my mind, I'm not going to hire somebody who doesn't have one of those. But yet it would say bachelor's right? So you're not knocking people out by that. And if somebody's overqualified, clearly you've got to look at the job description. If it's for an entry-level analyst and you have 25 years of experience in your portfolio managing, you've managed institutional funds, and you're overqualified, right? But it's really the guts of what the job is all about that you need to gauge. And as I say, a lot of people don't read the resumes. They don't read the job description when they're applying. So you have to see, is this a fit? Can I see myself in this position the way it's described? And that's what you're looking for.
We're all analysts in this room, so be analytical about that part of the process.
All right, so we're ready it's 8:27. I want to give the panel opportunity to just for maybe 30 seconds or so share any closing thoughts or wisdom. I know there are other questions, but we just only have so much time in the room. So any thoughts? Who'd like to start? Closing advice for the group.
Remember what I said about elements versus experience. This whole process is about drawing a map from your skill set as you see it to what the company says they're looking for. And it doesn't always have to be a perfect match on paper. So you have to be use a little bit of ingenuity. And the only other thing for me is I have 2 more chocolate packages and a few copies of my book if anybody's interested. And thank you.
Other people on the panel.
I would just say persistence. I think that, persistence and flexibility. Probably there's a lot of jobs out there, whether that be in New York or San Francisco or Chicago. Maybe you can't start in South Florida and you have to move to New York for a couple of years and work up there and then come back. But as long as you remain flexible, I think that there's an opportunity out there for everyone if this is something you truly want to do.
Great.
Yeah, I think, I'd say one of the biggest tips of advice is really focus on developing your communication skills. So much of, you can be the best analyst in the world and be able to crunch numbers, but if you can't communicate effectively, it's certainly going to hurt you long term in the career. So, I would say, I always say the most useful classes that I took at the University of Michigan were public speaking and written communication. That's the ones I use on a daily basis. So if you're a student, spend your time and make sure you develop your communication skills.
Yeah.
Go Blue.
I absolutely agree with everything. And the only thing I would add is I want to see, people who are enthusiastic, who are interested, and who we think are going to fit well within the organization. Keen intelligence, people who are really driven, and that would be ideal.
Great. Well, let's give a big round of applause. And thank you so much. It was wonderful.